Why did three Navy SEALs walk into a dusty Montana garage and stop dead in front of her? Amanda Brooks didn't flinch, though the wrench slipped from her hand, clattering against the concrete with a sound sharper than it should have been. The air inside Castellano's auto service was thick with heat and motor oil, and yet the sudden arrival of military boots on the bay floor chilled her to the bone. She stayed beneath the raised Humvee, fingers resting lightly on the steel frame, her breathing low and steady, though her heart wasn't. Not now, not with him standing there, Lieutenant Commander Tyler Reed, SEAL Team Lead, with a presence too large for the cramped civilian garage. Beside him, two more, Chief Santoris and Petty Officer Mason Clark. Their eyes swept the room wide. Scanning software. They didn't belong here. None of them did, and Amanda? She belonged least of all. I requested your most experienced diesel mechanic, Reed said, his voice cut through the buzz of the fans overhead, through the chattering socket, wrenches, and unspoken tension. Not someone playing mechanic with YouTube tutorials. It wasn't the words that stung. It was the familiarity. Amanda had heard variations of that line for 20 years. Not strong enough. Not qualified enough. Not the right kind of expert. She kept her eyes on the undercarriage, said nothing, but her hands trembled, not from fear, from memory behind her. She could feel Castellano's staff freeze mid-motion. Trevor, Jesse, Nia, the people she'd worked beside for years, who knew her as nothing more than Amanda, the quiet, capable, grease-stained woman who never talked about her past. But the man in the uniform was staring directly at her. He wasn't seeing Amanda Brooks, garage mechanic. He was seeing the ghost of someone else entirely. Commander Reed. Lou Castellano stepped forward from his office, wiping sweat from his brow. His voice was friendly, but it had a hint of tremor. The sound of someone realizing a government contract was slipping through their fingers. Let me get Trevor on it. He's handled Humvees before. Reed didn't move. His eyes stayed fixed. I'm not interested. In amateurs, Amanda exhaled, just once, through her nose, quietly. Then she spoke. Not for them, but because her instincts wouldn't let her stay silent. The differential housing has stress fractures. Her voice wasn't loud, but it changed the air. The words fell like stones, silencing even the buzz of the compressor. She slid out from under the Humvee with the grace of someone who had done it 1,000 times, which she had, but not here, not like this. The garage light caught the thin white scar running across her left palm, a wound no one had ever asked about, and if they had, she'd have lied. Now she stood, wiping oil on her pants, and looked directly into the SEAL commander's eyes. There. Hairline fractures, but they'll propagate. You put that under load in the desert heat, and you're not coming home. Mason Clark scoffed. She Googled that. Amanda didn't blink. Then let someone else fix it. She turned away. Just remember that when your team's vehicle gives out 60 miles from support, I tried to stop it. The words stunned even her. She hadn't meant to challenge him, but something deeper had spoken, a muscle memory, buried for 2 decades, pulling itself to the surface, and something else, a long-buried truth, a name, a rank, a past she'd spent years dismantling, piece by piece. Behind her, the tension shifted. Commander Reed said nothing at first. He was watching her now, not like a man doubting a mechanic, but like a soldier reading a field. You can fix it? He asked. Amanda reached for her personal toolkit, a box she kept locked, untouched by anyone else in the garage. Tools military grade, precision calibrated. Tools she had no business still owning, unless her past wasn't what she said. It was, I can fix it, she said quietly. But that's not the question. Reed raised an eyebrow. The question is whether you trust someone you think doesn't belong. He didn't respond. Not at first, but he nodded. Show me. And, just like that, 20 years of silence began to crack. Amanda laid out tools her coworkers had never seen before. torque wrenches that read down to the half-ounce. Interface modules military technicians would recognize. Trevor stood behind her, stunned, watching. The quiet woman he'd worked beside for 15 years speak a language he didn't know she knew. "You've been holding out on us," Jesse whispered to Nia. But Amanda was already inside the Humvee, her fingers flying over diagnostic panels. With practiced ease, "This transmission's contaminated with metal shavings," she said without looking up. "You've been using the wrong spec oil, civilian grade, and your cooling system's not balanced. You're running hotter on the rear axle. Something's off with the synchronizers." "Jesus," Torres muttered. "How the hell does she know all that?" Amanda didn't answer, but she knew why. Because she'd worked on this same model before. Not in Montana, in Fallujah, in Kandahar, in places the sun hit like fire, and every noise might be the last thing you heard. And because she hadn't always been Amanda Brooks, garage mechanic. She'd once been Master Sergeant Amanda Brooks, USAF, a technician so skilled she'd been flown into black site bases under the cover of night, tasked with making sure vehicles no one acknowledged even existed stayed operational under impossible conditions. But that version of her had died, or she thought it had, until today. Commander Reed watched her in silence. He wasn't sure who this woman was, not yet, but she wasn't who she pretended to be. That much was clear. "YouTube," she said suddenly, catching the way Clark was staring at her. "Teaches a lot." Reed gave a dry smile. "YouTube doesn't teach operational diagnosis under combat conditions." Amanda met his gaze. "No, but war does." For a moment, neither moved. The garage wasn't just a garage anymore. It was a scene, a question, a memory trying to claw its way back to the present, and something else too. The truth, the one Amanda had buried under 2 decades of oil changes and silence, was starting to rise. Because when you've spent years hiding in plain sight, it only takes one moment to remind the world who you really are and what you still know, even if you wish you didn't. What happens when the past you've buried walks in, wearing a uniform and asking questions you can't ignore? Amanda arrived early the next morning, earlier than usual, before Trevor's engine cough, before Jesse's playlist echoed through the garage speakers, before Nia started her checklist in the front office. She needed silence, and not for the repairs. The garage felt different now, not in its tools or its air, but in its eyes. Every glance held a question, every silence a suspicion, mourning. "Amanda," Trevor said, eyes flicking up from his clipboard. His voice tried to sound normal. It didn't. Jesse gave a nod from the counter, more cautious than usual. Only Nia offered her regular smile. Though, even that had a hint of uncertainty, like someone trying to remember whether they'd been lied to or just never looked closely enough. Lou emerged from his office, coffee in hand, jaw tight. She saw it coming before he even opened his mouth. "Amanda, we need to talk." She followed him into his cluttered office, the same room where she'd signed on 2 decades ago. No references, no resume, just a handshake, a quiet promise, and the competence to make any engine hum. He shut the door behind her for the first time in 20 years. The office suddenly felt too small. "Yesterday changed things," Lou said, sitting slowly. "I've got calls coming in, Amanda, from the contracting office, the base. Even some guy from Helena wanting to know who exactly I've got working under military equipment." Amanda said nothing. "You never mentioned you had military experience," Lou said. "You never mentioned anything. People are asking if I knew. If I covered for you, I never lied to you. But you never told me the truth either." Amanda looked down at her hands, scarred, stained, and still trembling slightly. The weight of what they'd done, what they hadn't saved, what they remembered, all sitting there like residue that wouldn't wash off. "I used to work on military vehicles," she said quietly, "before I came here." "What kind of work?" "The kind that required security clearances. NDAs, polygraph screenings every 6 months. I serviced vehicles, ... For people who didn't officially exist. Lou leaned back slowly. The silence was filled with the hum of the lights, the faint ticking of the wall clock, and the sound of a truth finally catching up. So why come here? Why disappear into Millbrook? Because 20 years ago, I needed to be invisible, Amanda said. And you needed someone who could make a carburetor sing without asking why. The chime of the bay doors broke the silence. Through the window, Amanda saw it. A black SUV, government plates. 2 men stepped out. Suits, earpieces, the kind of clean-cut posture that didn't need to announce federal authority. They radiated it. Lou cursed softly under his breath. Amanda, what the hell did you get us into? I don't know, she said. But she suspected. She knew the knock would come someday. And like always, it wasn't a knock. It was a landing. The taller of the 2 agents stepped forward, credentials in. And before he even opened the door, Mr. Castellano, he said, I'm Agent Davis with NCIS. This is Agent Patterson. We'd like to speak with Amanda Brooks. Amanda stepped forward before Lou could answer. I'm Amanda. They didn't ask her to leave. They didn't cuff her. They just asked her to sit. Then the questions began. How did she know about military-grade vehicle vulnerabilities? What was her background before Millbrook? Had she ever been affiliated with a defense contractor? She gave careful answers, public ones. Nothing about black sites, nothing about midnight convoys. I diagnosed a mechanical issue based on experience. She said simply, it's not classified to know what wear patterns look like. Maybe not, Patterson said. But the specific vulnerabilities you identified aren't common knowledge. In fact, they match a briefing we delivered just 3 months ago to Naval Special Warfare teams. Amanda didn't blink. Then your contractors need better filtration systems. She didn't say it with pride, but neither with fear. Because something inside her, something she'd shoved so deep she'd forgotten it had a voice, was waking up. Agent Davis pulled out a folder, thick. Too thick for just one mechanic. We ran your background, he said. You showed up in Millbrook 20 years ago with minimal employment history. No references. No real records before that. Amanda looked him in the eye. I value my privacy. This level of privacy, Patterson said, is usually reserved for people trying to vanish. Amanda knew what was coming next. She knew the walls were narrowing. But something else was happening too. She wasn't crumbling. She wasn't hiding. She was stepping forward. I need to make a phone call, she said. Davis raised an eyebrow. To whom? My former commanding officer. Outside the office. Her hand shook slightly as she scrolled through a contact list she hadn't touched. In 20 years, numbers burned into memory. Names she'd promised never to say aloud. She dialed one. Colonel Michael Harrison, Ramstein Air Base, her CO for 3 deployments. If he hadn't been reassigned or retired, he might still be reachable. The phone rang. Then a voice. Colonel Harrison's office. Sergeant Major Williams speaking. Amanda took a breath. Tell him it's Master Sergeant Amanda Brooks. Code words. Operation Desert Shield, maintenance protocols. There was a pause, a long one, then hold. Sergeant Brooks. Sergeant. The rank hit her like a jolt. She hadn't heard it in 20 years, but hearing it now felt like slipping into a skin she thought she'd shed. One that still fit finally. Harrison's voice. Low, controlled, sharp. Amanda? Is that really you? Yes, sir. I've been waiting for this call for a long time. When Amanda walked back inside the garage, the agents looked up, expectant. I contacted someone who can clarify things, she said. Who? My former CO. He'll be here by tonight. And what will he tell us? Patterson asked. That I'm not a security threat, Amanda replied. That I've been protecting classified information for 20 years by hiding it inside a civilian life. The room went quiet. The agents exchanged a glance then. One of them nodded slowly, and for the first time in 20 years, Amanda Brooks didn't feel like a woman hiding behind oil stains and socket wrenches. She felt like a soldier again, a soldier waiting to be called forward, but still unsure. If she wanted to be. What if everything you blamed yourself for was never your fault? The storm hit that afternoon, just as the black helicopter swept low over the Montana prairie and settled behind Castellano's auto service. The rotor wash bent the grass flat, shook the windows, and sent every mechanic in the building stumbling toward the bay door. Amanda didn't move. She knew exactly what a landing like that meant. Not theater, not protocol, urgency. Inside, the agents had gone quiet. Outside, the town was already buzzing, rumors spreading fast. First the SEALs, then federal suits. Now a chopper, and in the middle of it all, Amanda Brooks, the woman who'd just been a quiet, forgotten mechanic for 20 years, until today. 3 figures stepped out of the aircraft. One was instantly familiar. Colonel Michael Harrison, older now, silver replacing black in his hair. But his posture hadn't changed, rigid, authority without effort. Flanking him were 2 others, a woman in a suit, all sharp lines and Washington tension, and behind them. Amanda's breath caught. Jesus Christ, the woman muttered when she walked in. When you disappeared, you really disappeared. It was Master Sergeant Patricia Hendress, her former team leader, the last person Amanda had spoken to before. She vanished from Ramstein 20 years ago. I wasn't hiding from the military, Amanda said, her voice low but steady. I was trying to live. The garage transformed. Lou's business became a federal installation in minutes. Civilians were asked to step aside. Surveillance equipment appeared. Files were opened on workbenches. A map was unrolled across the hood of the same Humvee Amanda had diagnosed just the day before. This wasn't about one vehicle anymore. This was about secrets. Colonel Harrison wasted no time. Amanda, your former unit, the 823rd, has been under periodic security review. 3 former members have been investigated. 2 are missing. Amanda blinked. I haven't spoken to anyone from the unit in 20 years. That doesn't matter. The woman in the suit, Deputy Director Sarah Chun, interjected. You demonstrated knowledge of classified systems. That makes you a potential breach, intentional or not. Amanda felt the room tilt. Hendress stepped closer. We didn't just fix vehicles, she said. We maintained experimental systems used in Black Ops missions. Stealth mods, AI routing, untraceable communications, things still classified. Amanda looked down. Her fingers were shaking again, but not from fear. From something else? Guilt? Real? Personal? Inescapable guilt. There was a mission, she said softly. 2004, Iraq. I was in charge of certifying 3 vehicles for a recon op. One of them, the armor plating failed. 2 soldiers died. Harrison's face tightened. I signed off on that armor, but I missed something. I followed spec, trusted the tech sheet. I shouldn't have. There was silence in the garage. Even the agent stood still. You're talking about Falcon Bravo, Hendress said quietly. IED's 1 Humvee ruptured, catastrophic failure at the lower joint. You think that was your fault? I don't think. I know. Amanda closed her eyes. I left the military because of that mission, because I couldn't trust my own judgment anymore. 2 men died, and I stamped their death sentence without knowing it. No, Harrison said. You didn't. He opened a file, inside. The original specification sheets from the defense contractor who'd supplied the armor, marked with red flags, corrections, and final confirmation. The bolt pattern was deliberately incorrect. A foreign intelligence op had infiltrated the contractor. Amanda's breath hitched. What? You were sabotaged, Chun said. The specs you followed were designed to fail. She staggered back a step, her mind reeling. 2 decades of guilt based on a lie? Her hands, her silence, her hiding, all built on a betrayal she never knew happened. You weren't protecting yourself, Harrison said. You were protecting national secrets. Your self-imposed exile kept that knowledge out of enemy hands. You've been a security asset without knowing it. Amanda couldn't speak. She sat down on the nearest stool, eyes blinking rapidly as her entire worldview cracked beneath her. The faces around her blurred. SEALs, agents, former teammates, and somewhere in that fog, one voice pierced through. Tyler Reed, what happens? Now? He asked quietly. Harrison looked at Amanda. That depends. She stood in the open air just beyond the garage. The rain thinning now into a soft patter. Montana smelled like earth after a storm. The kind of smell that used to feel safe. Ordinary. Now it smelled like truth. Trevor approached quietly, hands in his pockets. 20 years, he said. And we never knew. I didn't want you to know. Why? Because I thought I didn't deserve to be seen. Nina followed, Jesse behind her. None of them said anything for a moment. Then Nia spoke. My brother was in Afghanistan. I took him out. Vehicle failure. I blamed the mechanic for years. For not catching something. Amanda looked at her, eyes damp. But the truth is, Nia continued, war doesn't need villains. Sometimes it just needs a window, a crack, something small. It gets in, and it kills. You're not the reason. They died. But you might be the reason others lived. Back inside, the agents were still talking. Security clearances, contracts, options. But Amanda didn't walk away from the conversation this time. She stepped in, and when they asked, for the second time, what she wanted to do now, she didn't hesitate. I want to stay here in Millbrook. Chun blinked. You don't want to return to active duty? I want to train people. Mechanics, soldiers, anyone who'll listen. Harrison raised a brow. You're suggesting a military training facility in a civilian garage? I'm suggesting, Amanda said, that we build a place where what I know doesn't get buried, where guilt isn't a muzzle, where what happened to me, to my team, doesn't happen again. Silence, then. That could work, Chun said, under proper clearance. With oversight, Tyler folded his arms. The Navy would send people. So would the Army. The Air Force, maybe even the Marines, because one woman in a garage had just done what manuals and protocols often failed to do. She'd heard the silence of a dying vehicle and answered it before anyone else could. Amanda looked around her, at the garage, the people, the storm-lit landscape. This wasn't a punishment anymore. This was her mission. What if the very place you went to disappear became the place the world needed you most? 3 days. That's all it took for Castellano's auto service to become unrecognizable. Where greasy manuals once sat piled on the counter, now lay blueprints, schematics, and classified vehicle diagrams. Where Trevor used to sort invoices, he now read through federal instructor certification packets. Where Amanda kept her tools locked away, pallets of advanced diagnostic systems were now being unloaded by uniformed logistics personnel. The packing lot was a small base, the back lot, a restricted area, and Amanda? She stood in the middle of it all, calm outside, chaos inside. They'd given her a title, Director of Technical Training. It sounded too big, too formal, too final. But as she stood near Bay 3, the same place where she once rolled quietly under vehicles to avoid being seen, she realized something. She wasn't hiding anymore. You good? Jesse asked, handing her a tablet displaying the proposed training structure. Amanda nodded, skimming it quickly. We'll need to split diagnostic training into 2 tiers. The new recruits won't be ready for failure mapping until they understand harmonic resonance patterns. Jesse blinked. I don't even know what half those words mean. You will, she said, and smiled faintly. Soon. Across the garage, Nina was walking a group of Navy logistics officers through safety protocols. Her natural warmth had become an asset, calming anxious newcomers and diffusing the tension that came with working around classified systems. Trevor, meanwhile, had taken to his new role like a duck to water. He had a whiteboard up by noon, filled with troubleshooting drills. "You smell that?" he said to the class. "That's transmission fluid at 220 degrees. Burnt toast and fear. Learn it. Know it." Amanda almost laughed, Instead, she turned to the entrance as two more visitors arrived. Commander Tyler Reed, again. And this time, not alone, two SEALs walked in behind him, both lean, alert, and curious. "Dr. Brooks," Tyler said, using the new title with a tone of actual respect. "These are your first students." Amanda extended a hand. "Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez, Petty Officer Williams." Rodriguez studied her. "We were told you could teach us how to keep our rides alive when everything else is falling apart." "I can," Amanda said. "But first I need to unteach everything the manuals drilled into you. Out there, manuals die with batteries. Intuition lives." Rodriguez smiled faintly. "Good. I'm tired of losing friends to bad guesses." Amanda gestured to a disassembled Humvee. "Then let's start there. They didn't just learn, they listened. These weren't green recruits. These were men who'd patched radiators with ammo, belts, bypassed filters with cigarette packs, and rerouted entire comm systems using nothing but duct tape and prayer. They knew desperation. Amanda taught them precision by evening. The garage looked like an open-air university. Hendricks returned the next morning with another convoy, this one hauling prototype vehicles and enough diagnostic tech to rival most. "Bases, your new toys," she said. "We need you to break them before someone else does." Amanda nodded, barely hearing her. She was already in motion, cataloging, testing, assessing. Because here's what no one understood. She didn't want medals. She wanted machines that didn't break in the field. She wanted lives that didn't end because a bolt came loose 40 miles from backup. Lou wandered in around noon, eyes wide, lips parted like he still hadn't caught up. "My garage is a government facility?" he muttered. "What the hell happened?" Amanda smiled gently. "You hired someone you didn't understand." He blinked. "Not sure I ever will." "You don't have to. Just let me keep teaching." That night, when the garage was quiet and the students were gone, Amanda stood alone in Bay 3. 20 years of silence, 20 years of shame. And now, here she was, building something she never thought she'd earn again. Purpose. Not redemption, not glory. Just quiet, focused purpose. The air compressor kicked on behind her. The sound was sharp, familiar. It didn't make her jump. Not anymore. She turned back to her workbench, running her hand across a training schematic, and whispered to herself, "They said I disappeared, but I think I was just ... waiting to matter again." Why do some people fear being seen, even when the spotlight could save lives? Amanda didn't notice the Pentagon official at first. She was too busy testing a new vibration diagnostic module with Rodriguez and Williams. The training vehicle was rigged to simulate a complex multi-point failure, a cracked axle bearing, electronic desync, and a delayed ignition coil spark. Textbook chaos. But Williams had caught it in under 90 seconds. "You're not fixing the problem," Amanda reminded him. "You're diagnosing the truth. The two aren't always the same." That's when General Patricia Morrison entered the garage. She didn't bark orders, she didn't wear arrogance, but her eyes, sharp, unblinking, moved through the garage like they were measuring futures. "You must be Dr. Brooks," she said. Amanda straightened. She wasn't used to generals. "I read your report. You've cut field failure rates in half and repair times by 30%. The Pentagon doesn't hand out those numbers lightly." Amanda glanced toward her students, who were now standing at attention, uncertain whether to salute or stay put. "This isn't about numbers," she said. "It's about survival." Morrison nodded. "Which is why I want to expand this program." Amanda blinked. "Expand?" 3 new bases, your curriculum, your model, your methods. But without your presence." Amanda frowned. You want me to give it away? No, Morrison said. I want you to scale it, train the trainers, build a model so effective. Even the bureaucracy can't ruin it. That was the real compliment. Tyler Reed approached, nodding toward Amanda. She's already doing that, but she's still the reason it works. Amanda looked around the garage. Rodriguez was showing a group how to calibrate pressure readouts by ear, something Amanda had taught using a demo she recorded with a coffee can, a screwdriver, and a stethoscope. Nina was walking a young recruit through failure memory triggers, teaching how trauma could shut down logic during diagnostics. Trevor was laughing with a Navy tech over a misaligned shaft that once cost him a weekend and a relationship. This was more than training. It was healing. Expansion means more bureaucracy, Amanda said. It also means more lives saved. Morrison replied, and more soldiers who don't return home in pieces because someone failed them in a garage they never saw. Amanda didn't answer immediately. Instead, she picked up a one-socket wrench, not one of the federal-issued ones. Her own from 2 decades ago. She turned it in her hand, then looked up. I'll do it, she said quietly, but only if the training stays grounded. No theory without hands-on. No automation without instinct. If a soldier can't fix it blindfolded, they're not certified. Morrison smiled. You're tougher than half my drill instructors. No, Amanda said. I've just seen what happens when soldiers die because someone like me didn't speak up. A silence settled between them, a respectful one. Then Morrison extended her hand. Amanda shook it, and with that handshake, the woman who once fled her past agreed to become its architect. That night, Amanda returned to her apartment for the first time in 3 days. It felt small now, not in size, in meaning. The walls still held her framed blueprints. Her closet still held her old uniform, folded and untouched. But the silence that once comforted her now felt hollow. There was a knock at the door. She opened it to find Nina standing with a box. What's that? Mail from D.C., she said. Lou dropped it off. Amanda took the box, eyes narrowing at the return address. Air Force Logistics Command. Inside, a letter, formal, stamped. One line stood out. You are being considered for the distinguished service medal. Amanda froze, not because she didn't want it, but because for so long she believed she didn't deserve anything at all. Guess they finally noticed. Nina said softly. Amanda sat down, reading it again. Recognition doesn't mean you stop hurting, she said. It just means someone else saw what you carried. Nina nodded. And maybe it means it's time to put it down. Amanda looked at her. I'm scared, Nina. Of what? Of being seen, really seen. Nina's voice was steady. You already are. Amanda smiled faintly. And for the first time in 2 decades, not out of politeness, but because something inside her had finally, quietly shifted. What does it mean to finally wear the uniform again, when the world knows who you really are? 6 months after the day the Navy SEALs walked into her garage, Amanda Brooks stood beneath the high white lights of the Pentagon's Medal of Honor reception hall. Her Air Force dress blues fitting her like a second skin. Familiar, sharp, earned, but she hadn't worn them in over 2 decades. Not since the day she walked away from the military with nothing but a duffel bag, a bag full of unspoken guilt, and hands that refused to stop shaking. Now, those same hands reached up and adjusted the ribbon on her chest. The Distinguished Service Medal, heavy, not just in weight, in what it meant. Behind her sat rows of people whose lives she'd touched. Trevor, Nina, Jesse, Lou Castellano, beaming in a suit too tight for his shoulders, but perfect for the occasion. Further back, military officials from all branches, Special Forces operators, Pentagon staffers, members of Congress, and just beyond them, a trio of women in uniform, younger, eyes bright. Watching her like she was a lighthouse they'd followed through fog, and maybe she was. The Chief of Staff stepped to the podium. Master Sergeant Amanda Brooks exemplified the highest traditions of military service. Through technical innovation, unwavering dedication, and personal sacrifice. She protected the lives of countless American soldiers. Amanda stood still as her record was read out loud. Not just deployments, not just diagnostics, but the aftermath. How her protocols saved over 400 American lives. How her maintenance procedures were now standard across multiple special operations units. How her self-imposed exile, once misunderstood as retreat, had become the foundation for a revolution in military technical education. But it was the unscripted line that stayed with her. Perhaps most importantly, the general said. Master Sergeant Brooks proved that true service doesn't end when the uniform comes off. Sometimes it begins again, with purpose. When the ceremony ended, she slipped into the shadows of the reception hall, quiet as always, until she felt a tap on her shoulder. Dr. Brooks? She turned. A young woman in an Air Force uniform stood there, nervous but steady. Behind her, two more, one Navy, one Army. I'm Staff Sergeant Sarah Martinez, the airwoman said. I graduated from your program 6 months ago. Amanda smiled. You're one of ours. How's the field treating you? Martinez exhaled. Last month, our comms rig failed during a live extraction. I recognized the failure pattern from your harmonic interference module. Identified the fault in 2 hours. We completed the op. All our people came home. Amanda felt her heart slow, her hands still, her breath catch. And the other two? She asked, looking at the women behind her. Lieutenant Jennifer Chun, the Navy woman said. Your program taught me more about leadership than my command course ever did. When the manual failed, your voice was the one I heard. Think, adapt. Listen to the machine, the Army corporal nodded. In my unit, they call us Brooks mechanics. It's become a mark of respect. Amanda blinked hard. Brooks mechanics? Chun smiled. It means we don't just fix things. We think before we do. We understand why systems fail and how to prevent it. Tyler Reed approached from the far side of the room with 2 SEALs in tow. One of them was Chief Rodriguez, the first student to ever walk into Amanda's training bay, now wearing 2 new stripes and a grin like thunder. I told you they'd remember you. Tyler said. Rodriguez nodded. I'm on planning staff now, apparently. Thinking like an engineer gets you promoted. Amanda laughed softly, but inside, something ached. Not pain, not shame, pride, and something else. Peace. Dr. Brooks, Tyler said, his voice quieting. What comes next? Amanda looked at him, at the 3 young women before her, and then at the medal on her chest. She thought of Fallujah, of broken armor and broken hearts, of guilt, of oil-stained hands hiding brilliance, of 20 years spent punishing herself. And now, she smiled. I think it's time, she said, to stop fixing old mistakes and start building something new. What if you realized your greatest legacy wasn't what you built, but who you built it for? 6 months after the medal ceremony, Amanda stood on the edge of a dusty tarmac in Arizona. The air shimmered with heat. Rows of specialized vehicles stretched before her, some experimental, others scarred from war, all part of Project Echo, the military's newest initiative for mobile support resilience. At the center stood her garage's blueprint, duplicated, expanded, adapted for deployment, and she was no longer alone in the blueprint's execution. All right, she called out, voice firm, commanding. 10 minutes to full breakdown. No manuals, no voice comes. You fail. You try again until your fingers know it better than your eyes. A dozen trainees moved like clockwork. Among them, Airman Martinez barked instructions. Navy techs followed. Even a few Marines, their usual swagger tempered by respect, fell in line. Amanda watched quietly, not with pride, with responsibility. These weren't just techs. They were guardians of something bigger than machines. They were the keepers of trust. Trust that a vehicle would run when the mission depended on it. Trust that someone, somewhere, had taken the time to teach what couldn't be written down. she stepped to the edge of the training zone, letting her gaze drift beyond the chain-link fence to the mountains. She hadn't seen combat in 20 years, hadn't been on a flight line, hadn't felt the vibration of distant ordnance or the crackle of a failing alternator under load. But it all came back, not in noise, in silence. That same silence she used to live in back when no one knew what she was carrying now. She spoke through others. Martinez jogged over after the drill. They're getting faster. They're getting smarter, Amanda corrected. Martinez smiled. Command's requesting we create an overseas rotation. Amanda raised an eyebrow. You ready for that? I wasn't, she said. Until I met you. Amanda studied her. Same fire she once had. Same doubts, but now channeled into discipline, into capability. And in that moment, Amanda realized something she hadn't dared to believe before. She wasn't a replacement for the system's failures. She was a correction. Martinez hesitated. Can I ask you something? Of course. What if I mess up? What if I miss something one day, and someone doesn't make it? Amanda looked at her. The question felt like a mirror. I used to ask myself that every night, she said. Still do, sometimes. Martinez waited. Amanda nodded slowly. You'll mess up, eventually. We all do, but you'll have trained someone, and that person will catch what you missed, and someone else will catch theirs. That's how you win a war no one sees. The war against silence, against shame, against shortcuts. Martinez's eyes flickered. Then she nodded. Copy that. Later that night, Amanda walked alone through the facility's edge, passing the row of storage containers labeled with her protocols. At the far end, a makeshift plaque caught her eye. Someone, probably Trevor or Nia, had sent it from the original garage in Millbrook. It was old wood, stained, and etched in clean letters. She fixed machines. She rebuilt people. Amanda exhaled. She reached out and touched it, fingers trailing along the grooves. There were no cameras, no reporters, no citations. Just this. A quiet moment under desert stars, and a piece of her life made permanent and still. Something tugged at her. She walked back to her quarters, opened the bottom drawer of her storage chest, and pulled out an envelope she hadn't opened in years. The letter of resignation, dated 2005, her handwriting cracked and faded. She never mailed it, never turned it in officially, just vanished. Now, she stared at it, folded it again and burned it. The paper curled in the trash can, edges turning orange. Then black, then gone. Some exits aren't meant to last. Some stories don't end where they break, but where they begin again. Amanda Brooks didn't disappear. She re-entered, one turn of a wrench at a time. Why do some people vanish, only to become the very map others follow? The desert wind was soft that morning, quiet, the kind of hush that comes before ceremony. Amanda stood at the edge of the newly built training hangar, a steel and concrete structure, modeled after Castellano's humble garage. Except this one bore her name, the Brooks Technical Readiness Facility. She hadn't asked for it, hadn't even wanted it, but someone, maybe Tyler, maybe Morrison, maybe one of her own students, had insisted. And now there it stood, her name, in bold metal letters, catching the sun, silent, permanent. Feels strange, doesn't it? A voice said behind her. She turned. It was Tyler Reed, sunglasses in hand, wearing his dress uniform like he hadn't aged a day since the moment he walked into her shop and mistook her for just another mechanic. Strange, she said. Doesn't. Cover it. He stepped beside her, both of them watching as a new group of recruits filed into the building, men and women of every rank and branch. Carrying notebooks, tools, and nerves, most of them didn't even know the full story. Not yet, but they'd feel it. The way a space holds memory, the way discipline lingers in steel, the way a culture is built from something invisible, care. You know what I think? Tyler said. Amanda glanced sideways. What? You didn't just teach them how to fix machines, You gave them a way to trust themselves and each other. Amanda paused, then nodded, because it was true. That had always been the mission. After the silence, after the shame, after the years of pretending she didn't matter. Later that afternoon, Amanda took a walk alone. She passed the Humvee display, the same make and model that had nearly broken her 20 years ago. Now it sat under glass with a brass plate. Failure isn't final unless you choose silence. She didn't write it, Martinez had. She moved past the simulation bays, where mechanics practiced under artificial stress, past the labs where new protocols were being written in her style, past the outdoor testing grounds where recruits were already adapting her systems to drones, amphibious vehicles, even low-orbit shuttles. She ended where she always did, at the quiet bench beneath the single sycamore tree, the one she'd insisted be planted next to the flag. She sat and waited. Sometimes she didn't know what for. Sometimes she just let herself remember. The roar of the C-130, the silence after, a blast, the ache of guilt, the weight of solitude, and then, more recently, the sound of someone whispering her name in a voice of respect. The sight of a student lifting a wrench with confidence. The feeling that maybe, just maybe, she hadn't vanished after all. Someone sat down beside her. It was Lou Castellano, a little older. Still gruff, still hers. Still don't believe it. He asked. I believe it. She said, I just don't know how to hold it yet. Lou chuckled. You don't hold it. You just let it land. Amanda watched a hawk drift overhead. What would you have done? She asked. If I'd told you the truth that first day? That I was Air Force? That I'd walked out on a life I didn't know how to fix? Lou shrugged. I'd have handed you a socket wrench and said, get to work. Amanda smiled. That's what you did anyway. Damn right. That night, back in her quarters, Amanda sat at her desk. There was one last letter to write. She opened a clean sheet, no rank, no formal address. Just to the one who's still hiding. I know how hard it is to speak. I know what silence costs. I know the weight of hands that couldn't save everyone. But you're not broken. You're not forgotten. And you're not alone. They'll tell stories about what I built here. But the truth is, I didn't build anything. I just showed up every day, even when I didn't want to. And eventually, I mattered again. So will you, Amanda? She folded the letter, sealed it, left it unaddressed. Somewhere, someday, someone would need it. And when they did, they'd understand. Sometimes, dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. And sometimes, the strongest thing a person can do is quietly begin again.